John Atkinson Grimshaw is one of the best painters you've never heard of. He was wildly popular in the 19th century, and for one very specific reason: Grimshaw was a master of painting the night. John Atkinson Grimshaw was born to an ordinary family in northern England in 1836. At first, he worked for the local railway company, but at the age of 24, he made the bold decision to quit his job and become a painter. Grimshaw had no artistic training. He taught himself. At first, he made still life paintings, focusing on details like flowers, rocks, or birds. This painting of some mossy boulders in a forest near his hometown was painted in 1863. Grimshaw was improving fast. He then started painting larger landscapes, along with domestic interiors. Here you can already begin to see Grimshaw's fascination with light and mood. A brightly lit house contrasted with shadowy woods. In the 1870s, Grimshaw finally moved on to depicting the things that interested him most, whether lonely lanes lined with trees or gaslit dockyards in the rain. Grimshaw had learned the skills he needed and now used them to create his own wonderfully atmospheric style. Now, photography was an exciting new technology at that point. Some thought it was bad for art, but others, including Grimshaw, saw it as a tool. Photos meant artists didn't have to work solely from memory, and they could also help with challenges like perspective. Hence, partly, the almost extreme precision of Grimshaw's early art. Does that make him a bad painter? Not at all, because the artistry came in how he altered those scenes. Photographs were merely a starting point, and as time passed, he relied on them less. Besides, it isn't precision or detail, but Grimshaw's mastery of light and color that makes his art so compelling. Consider his 1885 painting of Blackman Street, where Grimshaw conjures an enchanting vision of nocturnal London. Grimshaw was fascinated by the night above all else. In particular, he seemed to love the effect of moonlight shining through the branches of trees and casting shadows on old stone walls. This rather dreamlike painting, from 1874, is simply called A Moonlit Lane. And along with lonely lanes, Grimshaw adored the urban night. Gas lamps had become widespread during his youth, and Grimshaw dedicated himself to capturing their orange glow on the streets of industrial Britain. Like his painting of Boar Lane in Leeds from 1881, Grimshaw also loved autumn, unsurprisingly perhaps given its rich colors and solitary atmosphere, and created some of history's most delightful autumnal art. October Gold from 1889 was Grimshaw at the peak of his artistic powers. By his 30s, Grimshaw had become a popular, widely exhibited, and financially successful artist. The decision to quit his job all those years ago had been vindicated, and it's easy to see why. As in November 1879, Grimshaw had a special talent for evocative, moody art. At their best, his paintings are wonderfully mysterious, and one way to describe his style is as a sort of industrial idealism. In his painting of Liverpool Quay, Grimshaw turns what must have been a dirty and smog-ridden place into an alluring, even tranquil scene. They each seem to take place in a fairy tale or film, bathed in heavy shadow and embroidered with the glimmering of shop windows and gas lamps, like Greenock, 1882. It all comes down to his own fascination with the night and his co-equal ability to make us really feel it. The slightly fantastical atmosphere of Grimshaw's art makes sense. He loved medieval romances and even named his children after characters from The Idylls of the King, a poem about King Arthur by Lord Tennyson. Grimshaw also made paintings based on Tennyson's poetry, and at times, Grimshaw's art does verge on the Gothic. Both his urban and rural scenes have something darkly magical about them, like Putney Road, with the solitary traveler and the lighted windows of large, somber houses glowing through the leafless trees. You'll notice that most of his paintings include water, whether rivers, muddy puddles, or rain-soaked cobbles. This contributes in particular to his autumnal art, which somehow makes you feel cold and damp just looking at it. His main influences were the Pre-Raphaelites, a group of rebellious British artists who focused on scrupulous detail and vivid color, and James Abbott McNeill Whistler, an experimental American painter based in London. You can see their respective styles in Grimshaw's art. And so Grimshaw occupies a strange place. simultaneously a committed realist, precise details, accurate perspective, and a quasi-impressionist, overwhelming focus on mood, fascination with light and atmosphere. Scarborough Lights perfectly captures both sides of his style, but you can tell that Grimshaw struggled with painting people. In his painting of the River Thames by night, otherwise typically evocative, the pedestrians stand out as rather awkward and stiff-postured in comparison with the moon-drenched sky and glittering water. But Grimshaw knew his weakness and always preferred to keep his figures to a minimum, usually in the distance and with their backs turned to the viewer. Another feature that gives his art such a strong atmosphere of mystery and solitude. So Grimshaw's work, taken together, represents a sort of romantic, darkly dreamlike vision of the 19th century. The modern stereotype of shadowy and gaslit Victorian Britain is perfectly captured in his portraits of the urban night, like this one of Glasgow. And there have been few more evocative painters of autumn, whether by evening or by night. Grimshaw knew how to infuse his scenes with that uniquely autumnal stillness. So that's John Atkinson Grimshaw, one of the 19th century's most underrated painters, and a perfect artist for this time of the year. As the leaves start to fall, the nights grow longer, and rain sweeps in.